Hello and welcome not just to another episode of the Adventures in Advising podcast, but to episode 150. And now if you had said this podcast would make it past 10 episodes, I would have said you were crazy. Well, I'm glad I didn't believe that because here we are. Matt Markin here with Ryan Shekel. Dude, 150, what do you think?
Well, number one, congratulations. I think the idea of milestones can be played out sometimes. I was recently reminded of a kindergarten graduation ceremony where I was like, is this really a graduation or just moving on to first grade? But it's important to stop and celebrate, particularly when we've had the kinds of experiences we've had along the way. I'm the kind of person who, when I mow my lawn, I stop basically every row and look back at the new freshly mowed line. And that's not always the most effective way to get things done, but it's good to take a moment and reflect on where we've been and what we've done, and really appreciate just so many people who've contributed and been a part of these adventures for sure.
Plus the smell of freshly cut grass.
Yeah. Somebody said that was really healthy and made us feel better about life when we smell those chemicals in the air.
Oh, and I've listened to interviews that it may be alive. So, and it's actually them screaming. I don't know.
I like that idea too.
Well, I feel it's kind of a full circle moment in a sense, or just even happenstance that this episode is, we're going to be listening to interviews that we conducted at two conferences that we went to in 1 week.
Yes.
The NACADA Annual Conference in Las Vegas and the Gardner Institute Symposium in Chicago.
Yeah, speaking of adventures, last week was an adventure. I don't know that I've ever done back-to-back conferencing, and it definitely took some effort to be fully present. But again, one of my favorite things about the opportunity to gather with colleagues is the people you meet, the conversations you have, and especially the new ways that doing so encourage us to think about the work that we do.
I don't know what we were thinking. I'm 2 days back now at work, and being out last week, traveling and presenting, I'm exhausted. Never again will I do two events back to back.
Those are famous last words, I think, Matt Markin.
I know, and then it'll be 3 conferences in 1 week that we'll do next year or something. So as we mentioned, we were both at the NACADA Annual Conference in Las Vegas and then hopped on a plane to travel to Chicago for the Gardner Institute Symposium on transforming the post-secondary experience. We recorded interviews at both NACADA and the Gardner Institute, which we can't wait for you to listen to and hear. But before we do that, what was your experience at the NACADA conference? Let's start with the first one we went to.
Well, one of the things about location, the importance of place and space is just, a lot of folks, a lot of people drawn to the venue and the opportunity to maybe do something that you might not normally do in your everyday life. And that was exciting. There's a lot of energy, which is, so vitalizing and encouraging to be around people who share so much in common. And that was one of the things I remember from previous conferences in Las Vegas. My second annual conference ever was the 2005 conference in Las Vegas. And 2015 was a pretty big deal for me personally, doing my Star Wars presentation in a room of a couple hundred people. And I was, really excited for that energy. If nothing else, that's one thing you can count on at annual conferences is just being energized and built up by the shared passion of so many advising folks.
No, you mentioned the 2015 conference, which was also at Caesar's Palace. And that was actually it was the first one that I presented at with my now director. We did a poster session. And it's also one where I won lunch with Casey Self.
Oh, wow.
Which also spawned a great friendship and collaboration at future conferences after that. So that's kind of like my starting point of like where I got the presentation bug, and it never stops since then. So it's kind of nice to be back at Caesar's Palace for this conference, and really shout out to Kevin, Maria, and Janelle, the conference co-chairs. not just because they're from Region 9. Look, I know them, and I knew that, when they were named conference co-chairs, they had the experience and the drive and the collaborative nature to put on a fantastic conference, and I think they succeeded.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about the annual conference experience, is just how transformative it can be on an individual level, but also programmatically. So many good sessions that I'm talking with my team about, in the coming weeks, carrying the benefit from that community back to my local community is something that I really, really enjoy. And when you can engage with the best of what's happening in the field and bring it home with you, that's always a positive.
Any sessions that put you on the spot that stood out to you that you attended?
Well, one of the ones that caught my eye, that I made a different choice, and I think I'm going to revisit it, especially as long as the conference app is still available, was using the framework of hate. The title was "I Hate When Students Do That: The Role of Hate in the Advising Relationship." And I wish I would have been there for that one, but I'm definitely going to be following up with the presenters. There was a really fascinating scholarly paper session. Some presenters from a university in China built what we might think of as an intervention course for students who are struggling, failed a course or two here. Just college success strategy content, but they did it around multi-agent AI function. So essentially, the students who were invited to participate in the skills development course could choose the personality of their AI agent and how they talked about college success. It was described that one of them was a little bit like a class clown, and one was a little bit more serious. And I think testing those waters in like real advising applications, having conversations about students' interactions with those AI agents, was just constantly, my mind comes back to that possibility of what it would be like to sit down with a student after they've completed an AI agent-based skills development course and say, so what did it say? And what did you think about it? And it puts the advisor and the student in a different dynamic than the advisor is going to fix the problems with the student. I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, you just said AIs. I was like, yeah, of course, Ryan would.
How about you?
Yeah, a couple stood out. I went to one from Florida International University. So it was like a FIU pilot to practice of them using a new advising platform that the title said students prefer. So it was a partnership that they have, and it was an institutional adopter working with an active design partner in this advising platform. Yeah, they kind of guided throughout the whole presentation exactly like the history of it, how it was set up, and what the survey results showed. And it seemed like it was something that not only was kind of easy, I guess, to implement, but also students seemed to like it, staff seemed to like it, which a lot of times it's always one or the other, that, or maybe not even both. So
the one thing we have in common.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of really also showed that collaborative approach to like this innovation and change management for student success. And the other one I went to, say this correctly, the phalanx model, holistic shield formation approach to supporting students on academic notice. So I work a lot with students who find themselves on academic notice, or you might call it academic probation still at your institution. It was from San Jose State University, and Dr. Shonda Goward led that discussion with her team. I really found that one interesting, and things that I could potentially bring back to the work that I do. Another one that I thought was cool was the poster session called "Dealing with Imposter Syndrome" through the lens of comic book characters. These two guys had a fascinating poster. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. One of the things I was talking with some colleagues about was I don't like the term levels, but the many ways in which you can share perspectives at conferences. And there may be the impression that some ways of sharing or some levels at which we share at conferences are more important or more valued or not. But I love the conversations around the posters. There's an opportunity usually in the transition period between concurrent sessions. Maybe someone will be bold enough to come up after a presentation and talk a little bit or whatever. But at the posters, it's just folks talking, and yeah, a lot of conversations about comic books, which is always a good thing in my book as well. But yeah, I had the opportunity after our poster to walk around and see some of the others I wanted to check out, and I know a lot of those are still in the app as well. And if you're ever at a conference where there's a poster session and you're like, I'm not sure what that is, go talk to the people. That's why they're there. They want to have that opportunity to connect with you individually.
I know sometimes they're early in the morning, but please, these presenters put a lot of work into creating these posters. I want to have that discussion, and just the informal nature of it, I think, is just great across the board.
Absolutely.
But one of the other sessions I went to was the follow-up session to the keynote with Dr. Cecilia Santiago-González. One, because I missed the keynote. I misjudged timing of something fun I was doing and didn't make it back. So I was like, well, I should at least go to this follow-up to kind of hear what the keynote was about. But also because I got a chance to interview Cecilia, who was also a previous guest on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And so it was really great to reconnect with her, hear about her keynote, why she chose the topic she did, and to also kind of chat with her about questions that attendees had during her follow-up session. So it was about her keynote, but also chatting about Billy Chat, which is an AI-powered chatbot that provides timely, personalized support to students at Cal Poly Pomona. So, and continuing that AI conversation. So let's listen to that interview now. Hey, it's Matt Morgan from Adventures in Advising, and I get to chat with the keynote speaker from the 2025 NACADA Annual Conference in Las Vegas, Dr. Cecilia Santiago-González, who is also a previous podcast guest. Welcome.
I'm famous.
Yes, you are. Now, it's been a little over 2 years since you've been on the podcast.
I think so.
What's new?
Oh my goodness, what's new? I believe I've gotten a promotion since the past time that I was here. Oh my goodness, there's just a lot of change. Change is always constant. So just a lot of things. My kids are all growing up. I'm enjoying that season of life with them. Just really exciting things. And obviously it's been a hard year for higher education. So trying to stay focused on what matters and just trying to continue to do good work.
I mean, if there was no changes in higher ed happening, then something would terribly be wrong.
Right, exactly.
Now we're at the NACADA conference and you were the keynote speaker, opening keynote. What was your keynote about?
Oh my goodness. First of all, it's been an amazing experience, really an opportunity of a lifetime to really be in community with the advising community on such a big stage. And really, I try to focus my keynote on really our work and the impact that our work has on our students and on each other, really framing it from a point of empathy, care, and data and technology and all the things that are being thrown at us. And really, how do we ensure that we remain committed to the work, remain really knowledgeable, and how do we support each other through all that?
Yeah, and now we're recording this the day after your keynote at the follow-up session. And you mentioned that you almost said no to doing this keynote. Why?
I did. I think there's a little bit of imposter syndrome as a first-gen college graduate, daughter of immigrants. I almost said no. I didn't think that I could share a message that resonated, that was relevant, I guess, to the community. But I'm glad I said yes. I think it was a really empowering moment for myself as a professional. I think that I've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks around how it resonated with them. And so, note to self, say yes, and even challenge yourself when you're terrified, because it was pretty scary to be in front of thousands of your colleagues. So yeah.
Yeah, but not just thousands in front of you, but also
Online.
virtually as well.
Oh my goodness. And I forgot to say hello to people online. So
well, you can say it now.
hi, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the keynote.
But as a keynote speaker, what is that like kind of, there's presenting at a conference on a topic, but then there's, okay, you're the opening keynote. You're now make sure you engage, somehow. You have thousands of people out there. You have people watching virtually. How do you prepare for something like that?
I really tried to put myself in the shoes of an attendee. I've attended several conferences. I've been inspired by folks. I'm the opening person, so I gotta bring it, right? And I just really wanted to bring my authentic self to the stage. I also wanted to bring what I hear my team, my advising team, my campus share what is important to them, because I know if it's important to my team, it might be important for other people. And so again, I really just tried also to bring my personal story into it, and bring a little bit of my culture, my experience as a college graduate, as a Latina. And so I tried to really just be authentic and to be real. I could have maybe bored you all with a lot more statistics and literature and whatever, and which is extremely important. But I really just wanted folks to feel seen, heard, understood, and to really bring this message that we need empathy to do this work.
Now, speaking of being seen and heard, and this might seem weird, but at the follow-up session, Billy Chat got brought up a lot.
Yes.
For those that are like, what is Billy Chat? How would you describe it?
Yeah, Billy Chat is an AI-powered text messaging chatbot that has really transformed the way that we support our students at Cal Poly Pomona. Students are able to ask Billy questions 24/7. I get reports about how many students ask questions at 2 a.m. and it's hundreds. I'm like, what are you all doing up at 2 a.m? Like, I'm tired, right? But they are asking questions about registration, financial aid, mental health services, whatever it may be. So really, Billy is a tool that they use to get the questions that they need, and really demystifies sort of asking for help is a sign of weakness, and allows that entry point, right, with the institution and that connection. We also send messages to Billy that we call them nudges. If students haven't taken care of something that we have deemed important, that is an important milestone for us, we use data to really trigger messages for students who haven't done that in a very supportive way. And so students love Billy. I mentioned in my follow-up that it's endearing and a little scary that they have this deep connection with this AI bot. But I love it because it really allows me to listen at scale. And I mentioned this in my keynote yesterday, that it really has allowed me to get to know our students in a different way.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you calm in the morning, but by noon, ready to snap at everybody? Yeah, I know the feeling. But I found the answer deep in the Amazon rainforest, working with shamans who showed me what real balance feels like. That's where Rage Reset was born. Not some lab-made calm pill, but shaman-crafted plant-powered clarity for high-intensity minds. A precision blend of 13 ingredients that cool the surge without killing your fire. So you can breathe, refocus, and take back control in the moment you need it. Get your bottle today at freewiredlife.com/rage. Kill the rage, keep the fire. Rage Reset by Free Wired.
Now, you were mentioning the follow-up as well, that this was initially grant funded.
Yes.
Can you talk about how that came about?
Yeah, there was 5 CSUs that were in a consortium that were trying chatbots as part of our work. Some institutions used it to support summer melt, to prevent summer melt, others to do retention or specific student populations. And we sort of started with a pilot. We got grant funding from the James Irvine Foundation. We started with one cohort at a time until the whole student body was part of Billy Chat. And we've institutionalized it. we've shown really positive results. And again, students have this amazing relationship. I love that students tell Billy, like, you helped me, man, or you're the man, or I love you. Yeah, it is really, really cool.
Awesome. Well, I wish we could speak longer, but I know you're a busy person. But thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure.
So loved hearing that from the keynote at the 2025 NACADA Annual Conference in Las Vegas. And that's just one of the joys of the things that we get to do here on the podcast. The people we get to talk to, the things that we get to think about. And along the way, I had a chance to talk with somebody who had a very different experience of the annual conference. Alexander Bowie had been one of the two scholarly paper authors in a session that I attended, and it was his first ever annual conference, his first time doing anything NACADA related. And I got a chance just to sit down and talk with him about what that's like, and in particular, to talk about his work on understanding advisors' impressions and perspectives of predictive analytics models, especially the ethical implications around those tools. So let's hear from Alexander here in just a bit. So I'm here at the annual conference in Las Vegas 2025 with Alexander Bowie from the University of Toronto in Ontario, Canada.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into academic advising and what you do at your institution.
I feel like so many advisors, this was not my career plan when I entered my undergraduate degree. My undergrad's actually in music performance. I'm a classical singer by training and was super involved in student services and support, specifically residence life stuff as a student. And my first full-time job after university was as a recruitment counselor, working to recruit students to the University of Toronto. And that was the start of my higher ed journey. I then did my MEd at OISE, which is our Faculty of Education at U of T. And now I'm responsible for managing our academic advisor training program to support advising staff at all points in their career journey at U of T.
Fantastic. And you were saying that this is your first NACADA event, first annual conference, obviously, then, and you presented a scholarly paper. How was that?
It was good. Yes, it was the NACADA of firsts for me. So first time attending a regional or annual conference, first time presenting, first time submitting a scholarly paper. And it was wonderful. A real highlight of the experience for me was a colleague who had submitted a paper as well, hearing the sort of similarities within our work, connecting with so many amazing people who are interested in this type of scholarship and research. And I'd say another component of the conference that's been so engaging is I've been trying to attend as many of the AI and advising sessions as possible, and they have been wonderful and have really augmented some of the way that I've been thinking about how we use it in training for advising staff too.
So do you have any previous conferencing or what might be thought of as scholarly activities and stuff experience in other ways in your previous or prior disciplines?
Yeah, so I feel like perhaps in a pseudo way, I was a learning strategist and coach at the University of Toronto before this role. So was often facilitating and incorporating research into presentations for students. I actually had a virtual conference presentation this morning. It was the University of Toronto's advising conference today. It was happening in person, but I facilitated. And I was talking about the importance of building collaboration as part of the referral process for students. So I guess it was a back-to-back for me over the past couple of days. But yeah, this was my first time really bringing it to an international audience, and to get such great feedback was an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, I once had the opportunity when I was traveling for a conference in London to speak with the theory, philosophy, and history of advising community here in NACADA, and I agreed obviously to the advising community conversation, not knowing if the conference proposal would be picked up for the UCAT conference. Yeah. And then when I realized they overlapped, I really didn't want to cancel. I was like, you can do this with technology.
Yes. Yeah.
Who cares what the time zones are?
Yeah.
So it's impressive. It's not only a first in a NACADA sense, but a first time being at 2 conferences in once in some way. So congratulations on that. Tell me a little bit about your scholarly paper. Of course, I was in a session. I was fascinated with the frameworks and the models, and ultimately the thinking about the next steps, not just for you as the scholar thinking about where is it published and shared and all that kind of stuff, but also the takeaways that you hope for people who would read the paper.
For sure, yeah. So the premise of the paper was looking at the impact of predictive analytics, specifically predictive modeling of student success and retention. And part of the inspiration, I think, is I've always been an advisor who's been really interested in supporting students on academic probation, on suspension. And as an early career advisor was very, give me the data that I can use to identify these students and work with these students earlier. And I think as I continued to develop my practice, I grew more curious, but also more concerned with some of the practices that were being used to support specifically that student population. So in this research paper, I really focused on gathering and theming the perspectives of advising staff at U of T as they related to predictive modeling technologies. When I say that, I'm talking about machine learning technologies that can take massive amounts of student data, find patterns, analyze that data, make connections, and use it to generate some sort of prediction about how that student is going to perform in higher ed. And I framed it in a sort of explicitly ethical way to try and pick up on what some of those ethical tensions were that emerged from the use of this modeling approach and practice.
As somebody who has shared those concerns about their use, in your experience looking through this, the scholarship and engaging with others around the topic, have you found folks who don't approach the value or importance or worthiness of those strategies from any other model than ethics?
I think certainly, yeah. I think there's a number of limitations that are built into these sort of systems. Specifically, if thinking about the Canadian context, we don't really have any robust models in the university environment that exist. And that came up in the interviews as well. Some serious concerns about the cost of the design, implementation, but also ongoing evaluation of these systems, how the staffing or what the staffing requirement would be in order to respond to indicators that the system is producing was another limitation. And I think advisors really spoke to, at a large decentralized university like University of Toronto, our data sharing culture is not at a point yet where a system like this fully built out, where a bunch of these data points are collected, shared, and fed into a model is conceivable. So there's a number of concerns about the logistics that are coming through beyond the ethics. But I think speaking specifically to the ethics, and I was speaking with Hannah Hanshaw, who was my co-paper deliverer at NACADA, that right now the literature seems really rich with examples of people being able to build models that can accurately predict student success. And that's where the conversation sort of stops.
Right.
And that's where I was really trying to empirically pick up on that, Hannah more conceptually. But what are we as advisors understanding from these models that are accurate and can work really, really well? How are we actually translating that into practice? And how are we considering the impact, intentional, unintentional, that it might have on students and prioritizing these ethical concerns as well?
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
My goodness. Go back, take some discussant feedback into the paper for sure, and then hopefully submit it for publishing.
Cool.
And I am, just at this point professionally, going to take a step back from any additional higher ed stuff right now. But I hope that I might be able to do some replication of this study at different institutions, at speaking with different stakeholders. So maybe people that are a bit more involved in the data analysis, the It was great. I spoke with someone yesterday who actually was responsible or tasked with building one of these models at his institution.
Sure.
So I want to speak to those folks. I want to speak to the folks that are using these predictive technologies in their practice. And then who knows, maybe a doctorate further down the line, but going to take some time right now to just sit in the profession and continue to enjoy the work that I'm doing. Yeah.
Sure. Well, Alexander Bowie, thanks for the time and thanks for sharing all your information with us.
Thank you for your interest in this topic. It's really exciting.
Cool. Thanks.
So nice time chatting about the NACADA Annual Conference, listening to a couple of interviews that we did there. So let's fast forward a couple days to the next conference that we traveled to in Chicago. So that's the Gardner Institute Symposium on Transforming Post-Secondary Experience. So innovation and design, as they say, so every student can graduate. The idea behind it is you can gain new knowledge and apply that to your work. So it's essentially participants get to learn about approaches and for transforming various aspects of the undergraduate experience and apply that learning to efforts that help their institutions make sure more students thrive. I had never been to a Gardner Institute Symposium. I don't think you had either, right?
No, it was not just a couple of days, but a couple thousand miles too. And I love Chicago as a town, but I had first, of course, run across the work of the Gardner Institute through the first year experience framework. And then I know that NACADA had a partnership with the Gardner Institute looking at the conditions of excellence in academic advising at institutions and campuses. But the big thing that stood out to me is I received an email about the symposium, and it was the word transforming. It was an interesting way to think about the purpose of us gathering. And also the fact that their symposium was tracked very formally, it seemed, around specific topics, including, of course, technology and AI, academic advising. And I was thinking, if there's conversations about academic advising happening, I'm curious who's there and what the nature of those conversations are. And plus, it was a chance to do something new. First experience for me attending a Gardner Institute event.
Yeah, and it was kind of nice too because we got to do a panel there, or I got to facilitate a panel with you and Quentin and Alexander. So our Quentin became our conference and travel buddy for that one. And yeah, so I ended up going to, they had different tracks. I went to the purpose-driven advising track. You did the first year. What was that like with that workshop?
Well, one of the things that I always want to do when traveling with folks and attending conferences is make sure we get everything out of it that we can. And so intentionally choosing something other than you were going to was by design. It was intentional. But what wasn't intentional was who was facilitating our initial workshop series. There was a 3-hour workshop at the beginning of the conference around the topic that we had chosen, the track that we'd chosen. And it just so happened that it was being facilitated by Dr. John Gardner himself and Betsy Barefoot, his partner in crime, so to speak. And it was fascinating to be in the room with somebody with the kind of expertise and perspectives that Dr. Gardner and his wife Betsy have on this whole thing. But I, along the way, may have deviated from my track a time or two, taking a little bit more of a Whitman sampler approach to some of the sessions. But I really enjoyed having a framing concept to guide my thinking, essentially a problem to be working on and finding solutions for, even if in an academic kind of sense. And that was really, really helpful.
Yeah. So Quentin and I, we did the purpose-driven advising track. So it was a 3-hour workshop, and then on one day, and the following day it was like a follow-up 1-hour lunch kind of discussion. But the workshop kind of consisted of all of us essentially looking at creating maybe an initial plan for purpose-driven advising or revising what we might already have. So redesigning academic advising, helping students connect personal values, academic goals, professional aspirations. So it was kind of nice to kind of see this from a different style than one might see it from, like, let's say, NACADA. And how the Gardner Institute Symposium kind of talked about it in terms of this session was that it's grounded in Gardner Institute's evidence-based redesign model. And it's informed by research on relationship-rich education and student persistence. So it kind of explored the various advising practices, but from, to, and also for your institution. So this one was facilitated by Dr. Vicki McGillen, Dr. Sara Stein Koch, and Jess Ramsey. And afterwards, I was like, hey, I don't know if we were planning to do interviews at the Gardner Institute Symposium, but I was like, let me go up to one of them. And so Sara Stein Koch, I'd gone up to, because also I kind of knew her from emails regarding like presentations and sessions and all of that she was sending out. And it was just like, do you want to be interviewed for a podcast? She said, sure. And so I kind of did a quick interview, kind of learned more about her from her perspective, working for Gardner Institute, and her thoughts on the symposium. So we'll take a listen right now. I am at the Gardner Symposium in Chicago with Sara Stein Koch. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Matt.
Hey. So I met you earlier, and I was like, I think I need to have this person on the podcast. So thank you so much for agreeing to do it. But I heard in one of the sessions that this is year 14 for you at the Gardner Institute.
Yes, actually today is my work anniversary at the Institute, and 14 years. I'm in this is going into my 14th year with the Gardner Institute.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does it feel like it's gone by fast?
It has gone by very fast. I'm afraid to say how much older I feel than 14 years. I was definitely younger when I started.
Now, for those that have heard Gardner Institute, so whether it's like in an email or at a conference or something, how would you describe like to someone what the Gardner Institute is?
The Institute, to me, is, in a way, an innovative think tank full of and connected with people who really care about higher education, who want to see it progress in a way that is equity-based, even if that's not a safe word anymore, but that helps all students succeed. So it really bridges across undergraduate and even graduate education to make sure that students get the experience that they really want.
Yeah. And then we are at the Gardner Symposium.
Yeah.
What makes that unique, like versus like those that might be like, I've gone to conferences and we have keynotes, current sessions. What makes a symposium unique or different or similar?
Well, we used to have conferences, which are, full of concurrent sessions and plenary speakers. And in fact, we just did one of those for a graduate experience a few days ago. But the symposium is intended to really give people some working time and some connection space that's deliberate, thoughtful, purposeful. Yeah. So we have specific tracks for people to engage in, and they spend 4 or 5 hours together in a workshop that connects the concurrent sessions also with the workshop time. So you get conversations with people from the Institute, but then you get to hear from people across the US and potentially outside who are doing some of the work, and then see how that you can pull that together and synthesize that to really make it useful when you go back. So, if you could take one nugget away, maybe you could take two in this sense.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the tracks, and one of the tracks is academic advising, and that's kind of what drew me when I was looking at, professional development funds. Where can I go? And this was one of them. I've never been to a Gardner Institute Symposium, so I was like, let me go to this one because I see academic advising. To you, does having that track of academic advising make it unique, having it here at the Gardner Symposium?
I don't know that it makes it unique, but we're really homing in specifically on purpose-driven advising. There are lots of organizations that are amazing at producing scholarship and research around academic advising, and they know it inside and out. NACADA, of course, is the one that comes to mind. Lots of excellent researchers and practitioners in that space. We're looking to sort of take it to the next level and pull in, when we say purpose-driven, we're really thinking about the career competencies, the things that happen beyond the graduation portion, and how to get students and faculty and staff focused on even beyond that, handing over the diploma.
Yeah, and I will say just a short time of this day that I've been here, we had like the 3-hour workshop earlier in the track for academic advising, and everything you just said, like, yes, that is something I feel like was being accomplished in that 3 hours.
Oh, good.
And hopefully more for tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to this being going into year 14 for you, prior to this being at the Gardner Institute, you were at which institution?
I was at Purdue University, boiler up, for 14 years. And about, 7 or 8 of those years, I was with the Krannert School of Management, which is now the Mitch Daniels School of Business, just renamed, same excellent place. And the earlier half of my career at Purdue was in human resources, actually, in a group called Organization and Career Development, which we did a lot of strategic planning and professional development for faculty, staff, high potential staff. So it was really a great way to understand the ecosystem of a university, and a huge one like Purdue that has 10,000 employees. So we were very focused on what the employees are doing, how they're functioning, and making it a really high functioning organization.
And this wouldn't be a podcast interview without asking kind of about your journey. So I kind of learned about kind of going backwards, but kind of what do you feel has led you on this journey in these higher ed institutions and ultimately being at Gardner Institute?
I loved college, and I was very, very involved. And so I really thought, and I was a business major. It's my second major. First major, I was art and design. So I went to business, graduated, had such a great experience at my undergraduate institution. And I thought, I kind of want to work in a college. But I went a traditional path and started my MBA. And after a year of doing my MBA and looking at the Chronicle of Higher Education for the kinds of jobs that I wanted to do, I said, they all want a master's in education. Of course, that's probably shifted now. But at that time, they wanted an MED. So I changed programs and went into the MED program in higher ed at University of South Carolina. So, I mean, that certainly started the path. You know, I did internships and I started working in residential life, worked at Hamilton College, which is a small private school in upstate New York. I worked at, Pratt, the College of Art and Design in Brooklyn. And then met my husband, was married, and moved to Purdue. So it's been higher ed for me all along. I think I really enjoyed my time in human resources, although it wasn't more as traditional higher ed roles that I had been in. But I got to go from there to Krannert and open a communication center, because we had a huge number of international students and they needed help with public speaking and presentations. So I started that from the ground up with the dean's open budget, if you can imagine such a thing. I asked for the budget. What's my budget? What do you need? Was always the answer. So, I mean, that's a dream situation.
Oh, yeah.
So that got started. And then I moved into the position of director of the undergraduate program. And that's where academic advising came in. So academic advising was one of my areas that I supervised. And just such a fantastic position, situation to connect with students. So I saw a lot of the best students, and I saw a lot of the students who struggled. And I just loved that. Awesome.
Well, I know I really appreciate you taking time out of your day for this, especially how busy you must be with these going on. But thank you so much for joining me for this interview for the Adventures in Advising podcast.
You're so welcome. Thanks. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, it's great hearing from Sara. You know, you mentioned the sort of why not kind of attitude and inviting her to be a guest on the podcast and do an interview. I sort of took a similar approach. when I realized that Dr. Gardner was going to be facilitating our initial workshop in the first year track, I wasn't sure how that was going to go. Obviously, the main thing was, why not? We're here. It'd be worth asking. And I was thrilled when he agreed. So the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Gardner and talk about not just his journey in this higher ed experience, but also the Institute and how they work as a team, the nature of symposia, and why the structure that they take with this event that they're hosting. And I was just so excited to have a chance to talk with Dr. Gardner about academic advising as well.
All right, we're here in Chicago, Illinois, here in the United States, at the John N. Gardner Institute Symposium for Transformation of the Post-Secondary Education Experience. I'm thrilled to have Dr. John Gardner on the podcast as someone I met at this event in our week-long experiences of talking to people in places about academic advising. My name is Ryan Shekel, and this is Adventures in Advising podcast. Thrilled that you're listening. So Dr. Gardner, thanks for being on the podcast.
You're welcome in advance.
Yeah. Well, we've been in lots of different settings in our experiences where we share ideas, whether our expertise or expertise of others gained elsewhere with colleagues. And certainly I know you have a long history of that. What led to Symposium for the Gardner Institute? How did we get to having an event like this today?
Okay, that's a straightforward, simple question. My answer will probably not be quite as straightforward, not because I have anything to hide, but it's been a journey.
Yeah.
The Gardner Institute for Excellence in Higher Education is a 27-year-old nonprofit organization, and we were founded with a grant from the Pew Charitable Trusts and other foundations since then to do what we could to improve, especially the first year, but undergraduate education writ large, but not necessarily confined to that. And recently we've expanded to a focus to include, under this rubric of student success, to include graduate education, because there are about 4 million graduate students just in the United States alone who've been arbitrarily excluded from this focus on student success, and I personally regard that as a form of discrimination, and many of them are falling by the wayside. So we, in our 27-year history, we spent a time there where we were trying to tackle what we thought was one of the biggest and the most chronic problems in undergraduate education. And I could give you a list of the few really chronic problems. And it's interesting, your adventures in advising. I would say that normally academic advising is on my list of the most chronic problems. And I'm disturbed that it's been given so much attention since the forming of NACADA, with their first meeting in 1977, and then their founding as a nonprofit in 1979. It's not, I'm not saying it's their fault, but this chronic is something that remains not yet successfully treated, and it may never be. But the chronic problem I was going to reference here to answer your question was that we decided that the single component of undergraduate education that was most influential on students' failure, lack of progress, lack of fulfilling their potential, was their performance in what we call gateway courses. And so we started in, I guess it was 2013, 14, somewhere around there. We started to emulate a model that I had launched in 1982, where my beloved university that made me whatever it is I am today, the University of South Carolina. We started a series of conferences called what we called it initially the freshman year experience. We got rid of that sexist language, and we've been describing it as the first year experience. But within that, in the Gardner Institute, we were charged by our initial funder, to do new work and to not duplicate the work that I had done with my wife, Betsy Barefoot, for the University of South Carolina. So we started a conference, which became a series called the Gateway Course Experience. And it is an experience, and it's an experience that doesn't end well for many of our students. We were supposed to hold a conference here in Chicago on the Gateway Course Experience in March of 2020. And your listeners will certainly remember what happened then, the arrival of COVID,
Right.
and we had to cancel the conference. But we could not cancel our legal contract to a hotel in Chicago with a commitment for X number of sleeping rooms, meeting rooms, meals, and so on. So they gave us a 5-year return option to come back within 5 years and bring another conference. And so since the Gateway Course series ended in 2020, we have had other motifs, lens, structures for bringing together higher educators to talk about something. We did a couple of meetings on what we called unjust design, and we found that attendance in that, after the peak of interest in the Black Lives Matter movement and the rapid retreat from that focus, that's not how people, I'm sorry, wanted to spend their time. And so because a lot of the work we do in the Gardner Institute focuses on this notion of the beginning post-secondary experience as a foundational experience, whatever you want foundational to be, including what should advising be in the foundation of that experience. In my case, it's influenced by the fact that my first-year advisor, when I was a first-year student, 17 years old, my advisor told me that I was, quote, the stupidest kid he had ever advised, which even I was surprised at that. Really? The stupidest? Yes. But anyway, so I experienced, that problem with advising, and I decided pretty rapidly, even though I was only 17, I'd fire him and find an advisor who wouldn't make a conclusion like that. But the advising is one of the pieces, obviously, of the foundational college experience. So we've been doing something that when I was the CEO of the Gardner Institute, I'm the co-founder along with Betsy Barefoot, and 4 years ago, I decided I had been doing the CEO work long enough, and I wanted to have more freedom to do, I'll call it what it is, pet projects that were more creative and less about keeping the trains running, and that would enable me to do some new stuff that I could do more flexibly because they didn't require a lot of investment or resources, and we didn't have to sell them. So anyway, what the Institute, my successor, Drew Koch, decided to launch a series of meetings on what he called the transformation of undergraduate education, and that being built on a foundation which included something that I had been working on, namely the first year, but something I'd done a little bit in my one book on the experience after the first year, what some call the sophomore year experience. But I'd not launched a really ambitious body of work on this. So we're here because Drew and our Gardner Institute team had organized this symposium on transformation of the undergraduate experience, especially the first 2 years. However, before we did this meeting here in Chicago this week in October of what year is this, 2025, we did a 2.5-day meeting on the graduate student experience, because that's part of our larger higher ed writ large focus mission, where we're looking at another critical mass of population of students that I'm arguing has gotten less than the attention they needed for the kinds of possible outcomes for students that are of concern to me. So that's why we're here. And in the undergraduate symposium, we have what we call a track on academic advising. We are very interested in that, and we don't have all the answers. We're not an organization that is run by what I guess our NACADA colleagues would call advising professionals. We do have many people on our staff who have been long marchers with NACADA and who have experience in this, but that's not how we represent a primary expertise of what we're doing. And
yeah, you said that the opportunity, the freedom to pursue new avenues, new thinking, and do new work is definitely of interest to you.
Yes.
Is there anything else that is your favorite thing about gathering with colleagues from around the country and the world to think about the work that we do?
Yes, I have some favorite things. I think that these are kind of like alumni reunions. They're a chance to reconvene colleagues who've been working on shared problems for years and having the intensity and the warmth and the interpersonal connections that you can, now that COVID is essentially under control, that are now possible. And so there's more potential for serendipity. Not everything is planned, and there's nothing like bringing people together, particularly in a time when many of us are very stressed and troubled by how we're going to respond to the new national governmental norms about what undergraduate education should be about. So and I think you were asking, well, what I was looking forward to hearing some things that I might not have heard before. I organized my first conference in 1982 to teach myself. I thought, very selfishly, if I can organize a meeting, that one was about first-year seminars, and I learned, everybody else is going to learn. So it's always been about my own learning, generating learning for others. In this one of the things we did that we had not done before was 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, the Gardner Institute convened a national group of 11 really power figures in higher education, all of whom had known a man by the name of Russell Edgerton, who was president of the American Association for Higher Education. And his last work was he was a senior program officer for the Pew Charitable Trust. And from 1997 to 2000, he gave millions through Pew to innovators in higher education to start new work. And for example, he launched the National Survey of Student Engagement, the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, the Quality Enhancement Process through SACS, the AQUIP, the Academic Quality Improvement Process for the Higher Learning Commission. And he came to Betsy Barefoot and John Gardner and offered us, he asked me, he said, John, if you had 1 to 5 years and $1 to $5 million to do anything that you hadn't done yet, what you wanted to do, that would improve the first year in American higher education, what would you do? Well, initially, I didn't know what to say to him because I knew he had the 1 to 5 million, and I had the 1 to 5 years. I was barely 50. And so he gave us a plan, Betsy Barefoot and I, he said, after his first conversation with me about it, he said, John, I think we need to talk again, but come back in a couple of months and bring Betsy Barefoot with you. So we came back and we talked with them, and Russ gave us a planning grant. Foundations sometimes do that to plan the answer to his question, what would we do that would be new work? And so we told him we wanted to design some new methods and processes to help higher educators think about what is the first year of college and how is it organized and what is it accomplishing and what could be done to make it more effective, and in particular to help colleges develop something they didn't have. There would be new, which is a plan for excellence in the beginning college experience. And so we got a grant from Pew and then another one, and Russ took us to another foundation, the Atlantic Philanthropies. We got 2 grants from them. We got 2 grants from Lumina. And then the foundation said, John, you need to grow up, be a big boy and get off the foundation trough and create experiences for colleges and universities that they're willing to pay for in the marketplace. And so you shouldn't be that dependent on grants. So we became a fee-for-services organization, and this has been a 27-year journey now. And more recently, the foundations have expressed interest in our work, and they have been investing significantly in our work. So now we're a fee-based and a foundation-funded-based organization. But the purpose is to try to develop new approaches for improving student learning, to help people be more effective at that, and also to incentivize and reward innovation. And because we have these wonderful foundations in America who invest in new ideas and new ways of doing things, it's a way of they're sponsoring academic freedom, which we're so privileged to have, and to do something that this is not about enhancing the welfare of now what's called the Gardner Institute. That's everything we do. We're expected to give back to higher education. We're a public charity, right. And we don't own the assets. We're a nonprofit. We have a board that owns the assets. The organization that's owned by the board owns the intellectual property, and we are trying to make as much of that accessible for either no cost or low cost, relatively low cost. And so we are proudly nonprofit. Okay, that your tax status determines your behavior in many ways. And nonprofit organizations, they have some things in common with taxable organizations, but in our case, we're very aware that's our status, and it governs our behavior and our practices. So anyway, you better focus me. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Well,
I think I was trying to, yeah.
Talking about the growth and the development that comes from the opportunity to think in new ways.
Correct.
And for serendipity and gathering and the combination of the old and the new.
Correct.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed in my time here at the symposium is meeting some of the Gardner folks, you know, some of the people who help the Institute meet its...
Yeah, there are about 30 of us now.
And I heard that there's been pretty significant growth in the last couple of years.
Yes.
What's your sense of how these organizations that are in a growth mode, perhaps, how do you maintain the effectiveness with new people coming on? I know some folks are working remotely. You know, what have you seen your team and the team of the Institute doing well to not just be functional and execute on events and service or products or whatever, but just be a cohesive team as well?
Well, yes, we had to become a virtual organization when we could have all gone back to work and stayed where we had been co-located physically, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Western North Carolina, because Betsy and Barefoot and I had decided that's where we want to live. But when we decided to become a virtual organization, it meant then we could be free to hire people who wouldn't want to move to Western North Carolina and live in a small town of 7,000 people that Betsy and I think is beautiful. And we wouldn't imagine living anyplace else right now, but wouldn't be viewed that way by a significant number of others. So we became a virtual organization, but you have to manage a lot of things differently. You've got to find other ways to convene people and keep communicating. And if you're expanding, if you're so fortunate to be able to do that, you've got to socialize people into the culture of the organization and make sure that they have made the right decision and you've made the right decision and that they're getting a fit. And so they have to learn the culture, and we have to embrace them, and we have to make them feel like they are now playing a role in building the ongoing organization, and we want to know what ideas they have for innovation. I know I was influenced profoundly about, assimilating people into a group by my military experience. I was drafted when I was in graduate school, volunteered for the Air Force, served as a psychiatric social worker in an Air Force hospital, and I think that the great organizations like I saw the Air Force being were very intentional about what people in higher ed call onboarding. And so we have a very intentional process of onboarding our new colleagues, and we want them to understand our history and what are the core values of the organization, which are not negotiable and which they feel they can align with. And I don't want to sound heavy-handed about that, but there are things like they got to commit to the mission of the organization. They got to commit to our nonprofit status. They have to agree to practice our craft in certain ways, which means, for example, if our clients ask us to do something that we're not equipped to do, we tell them that. Okay, we don't see it as another contract opportunity and then say, well, we'll figure it out. I mean, some things we have to figure out as we develop, but we don't do things we don't feel we're qualified to do, and we tell people so. If we're asked a question, we don't know the answer, we tell them so. So it's a no bullshit. That we are known by our ethical stance on a number of things, and we want to treat people like we'd want to be treated, okay? Right. And we would want to treat people as if we could help them do things that would be good for their institution and for our country and for the larger public interests of this country. And I'm a veteran. I'm very patriotic still, and that's what I want. I want this organization to be contributing to enhancing higher education in the United States, and that's what it's all about. And a central component of that is the beginning college experience, which is not working from an ideal fashion. We lose a lot of people, just as we're losing a lot of people in the graduate sphere. But we've made a tremendous amount of progress since 1965, and I cite that benchmark year because that was the year of the Great Great Society legislation, the Higher Education Act, that made it possible to admit millions of students who hadn't been admitted before because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
And many of them still can't afford it. And that's a huge problem. So yeah, I see your question here. Obviously we're looking for people who would be a fit here.
Yeah.
And a fit with the values and the way we work and our norms. And we find people that do want to affiliate with us. And, everybody serves here except me on a 1-year contract. There's no tenure. It's a soft money operation. And there are a lot of people that want to be in a state appropriated job or a position in a private institution that has a decent endowment and looks like it's going to be viable.
Right.
So I think people by that definition are risk takers. The two people, my successor, Drew Koch, he and his wife came to join us 15 years ago, and they both had been living on hard money at one of the top research universities in the United States. There's never any question of whether that Purdue University is going to be around in the future. But so there has to be a certain tolerance for risk when you move from hard money to soft money. But so I think that's a quality of people that, but also there's this, I think everybody that comes to work for us wants to be in an environment where they're empowered to challenge the established ways of thinking. Why are we doing this way? Our favorite word is why. We practice an exercise constantly called the 5 whys. Why are we doing this way? And to help us rethink and not keep rolling out the same process, because the longer you do anything repeatedly, the more likely you become blind to the unintended consequences of what you're doing. And so, we find that to be viable, we've got to, this is not a novel idea with us. We have to listen to the customer. What do people need? What are they not getting? What could we be uniquely prepared to do to help them do something that they couldn't do without us? At the same time, that doesn't mean we're going to come in and run anything for them. Our job is to help them think through and make decisions, make good choices, and design new ways to serve students, okay, and to serve more effectively than they are currently being served. We have a mantra that's not unique to us. Albert Einstein, and who said it differently, is variously credited with this, and that is the way you're organized is perfectly organized to get the results you're getting right now. Right. And the way most people are organized is not getting the desired results. And that's what we want them to rethink. Anyway, you better keep focusing.
Well,
so I want to make sure I'm speaking to your
I'll
interest.
ask a sort of a concluding question for our time. You mentioned the sort of the chronic nature of advising and the outcomes of advising, the experience that students have through the filter of advising. What would you say would be, regardless of institutional or organizational affiliations, if someone's doing the work of advising, primary role, faculty role, peer roles, what would you say, from your perspective, is one of the most fundamental ways to change the way we think about academic advising?
Well, I think it's one of these things, like some of the other areas I work in, that people take it for granted. They don't have the ways to remind themselves of why this matters. They have not been able to get attention of the people who set the priorities for the institution. I hadn't thought about this way before, but I think NACADA has made a mistake and it is the emphasis on primary role advising, which ensures that advising is not going to be a priority for many academic institutions because it's not owned by the people who have the most power. Okay, it's interesting. I meet lots of academic administrators who care about this, but there's a lot of ambiguity about this. In the very name of the organization, the National Association for Academic Advising, to many in the academy, it appears more like it's a student services function, as if there's some dichotomy between academic and student services. I mean, I feel that the student services profession is about an alternative way students learn and grow that's different from the curricular learning, but in some cases Well, in all cases, not in many cases as important, but in some cases even more important. But I think the more an organization emphasizes anything that might suggest to the rest of the higher ed community that this is primarily about delivering a function that is not managed by the faculty, you're automatically inviting yourself to not be at certain tables because of that. That was certainly the last thing that was intended by this. But in everything we do, there are intended and unintended consequences. And whatever portion of the pie that the advising professionals get is generally made by higher level college and university administrators who are fundamentally in the academic community. And I think many of them see themselves as more separated from that, not divorced, but separated. And that, I think, is a mistake. In my case, I was almost a total failure in college, and my first advisor told me I was the stupidest kid he'd ever advised, and I learned that I needed to get another academic advisor. I look back on my own college experience. The academic advisor I ended up with was hugely instrumental in my ultimately flourishing in college, and I personally know the power of this. And I don't have the answers to what to do here, but I think that we've somehow gone astray here. That there's some corrective action that needs to be taken to somehow, and I know my colleagues in NACADA are challenged with this too, to somehow we've got to have more of a marriage with the people that set academic priorities. But you as an organization, you as I understand it, and I don't know what the current status is, but I believe that all the members of your board come out of the academic advising profession. I run a nonprofit organization. I have a board. Most of them come from the higher education world, but they come from all different, components of the higher education world. And so I've got a number of people on the board that didn't do what I did, and they can push me in ways that, and I don't have the Gardner Institute, I say our board, it's not just me, I am on the board, but we don't have any criteria that to serve on our board you have to have had a certain occupation, okay? But many nonprofit boards do require, that people who are on the board have some occupational affinity with the basic purpose. We don't require that people on our board have to be U.S. citizens, because they have to be U.S. educators. We have a gentleman on our board right now who's president of a university of the Middle East. We don't require that everybody have appointments in U.S. operations. I go to a meeting like this, and I always learn some things I didn't know before, and I'm forced to think about some things differently. And so I know that I need to keep finding ways to be around people who are going to push me and get me to see things that I don't see on my own. And I had an experience today, and this is instructive for you and your work with your podcast series. I've been doing a podcast now for about 3 years, and I've interviewed almost a couple hundred people. And we created an award for a group of innovators. We decided to pick 5 of them initially. And these innovators are known for the patron saint of the Gardner Institute, the program officer that gave us the first grant and literally was responsible for our creation, Russell Edgerton. So we're calling these 5 people Edgerton Fellows. All right, they did something. We asked them to do anything they wanted in the spirit of the late Russell Edgerton, to do something that would be connected to our mission of innovation and do something we hadn't done. I could do anything they wanted. We just wanted to turn them loose and empower them. Because what I want to do with all our staff, our new people, I want them to find something that they haven't done before, and they see our mission, and what could they help us see to do that we haven't done? Okay, so we awarded these 5. We put together an 11-person panel, and they selected these 5 people. We turned them loose and said, you got a 3-year term. We want you to do an innovation project from which the rest of the higher education community will learn. You can do anything you want. Okay, we did not try to determine that in any way. Well, what they decided to do, and they came back and told me this, they have taken some, by no means all, of the podcasts that I have hosted, and they're doing a very elaborate academic analysis of what these guests are saying about their own journeys to become innovators in higher education. And this group of 5 independent thinkers are saying, what are the lessons from this? What are these people teaching us about what others could do that was replicable, that's not something that only John Gardner could do? Because there's not much that I do that only I could do. And so they did a session today at this conference where you're interviewing me, where it was my first glimpse at, they spent an hour sharing what they've concluded so far by doing an analysis that includes the use of artificial intelligence to analyze these recordings. What can we extract from this that is actionable, that could lead to other innovation? Well, believe me, that was quite a learning experience for me. And I'd been the one doing the interviews, but they were able to see things that, through their analysis that I hadn't seen. That alone was worth coming here. So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that I can wrap up.
Yes, I'm sure you are.
The interview with saying John Gardner, podcaster.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the
well, you're welcome. The podcast, by the way, is called it's Office Hours with John Gardner. And I learned about office hours through advising.
There you go.
As an undergraduate student. I went by and saw my advisor frequently, and he even had me to his home and fed me dinner, he and his wife and kids. And I learned from one of these 5 Edgerton fellows who said to me some months ago, John, now we have email office hours. And I thought, oh my God, email office hours? Oh, that doesn't feel right to me.
I got you.
But this notion of office hours is a positive, intimate exchange between 2 people who cared about each other. And that was the most powerful advising that I got, and I know had a huge influence on me. And frankly, this is an impossible model in some ways. It's not labor efficient, it's not cost efficient, but I want every college student to have the quality of advising that I had, because I would be really different without it. So,
great.
Anyway.
Well, Dr. Gardner, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being on the podcast.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
the time.
You bet, Brian.
Well, and we have one more interview to go, and that is with our friend, our co-presenter, our co-panelist, our travel buddy, like we mentioned earlier, on this trip of 2 conferences, or a conference and a symposium, and that's with Dr. Quinn Alexander. I got to chat with him about his pre-con at the NACADA conference, his thoughts on the conference, his thoughts on the symposium, and a little tidbit I did not know through the years that I've known him is his connection to one Michael Jordan. Look who it is. It's Dr. Quinn Alexander.
Yes, I follow him here from NACADA.
That's a great segue. I mean, we were just at the time of this recording at the NACADA Annual Conference in Las Vegas just a few days ago. What did you think of the annual conference for NACADA?
I thought annual conference was great. It was big. There were a lot of people there. I hadn't been there in 10 years, so I had to refamiliarize myself with the place. It was a big location, but I think lots of great interaction. I saw lots of good sessions on the schedule. I attended some really good sessions. I gave a pre-conference presentation workshop, which was really exciting. So I guess we could talk about that, huh?
So, I mean, let's talk about the pre-con. What was the pre-con title? What was it all about?
So let me see if I can remember the pre-con title. It was about academic advised administrators, sort of looking out for the DEI needs of their academic advising staff. So often when we talk about DEI on a college campus, we're talking about students a lot of times, okay? How can we work for the best interest of students who fall into those populations? What sort of programming do we have for them, particularly in this political environment? How are we reaching out to those students to make sure they're okay? But one thing I noticed, well, 2 things. One, when we're at NACADA conferences, there rarely are a lot of sessions for advice for academic advice administrators. So I try to be intentional when I submit pre-conference workshop proposals or pre-conference concurrent sessions that they are addressing administrators, because I'm an administrator. Mm-hmm. And the other piece is just really sticking true to kind of a platform that I find to be very important, and that is, diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly on the college campus. But now for our advisors who are on the front line with students who are experiencing lots of different things. If you're working with DACA students, I'm sure that could be a really difficult position. If you are on a campus where you may be subject to some of the actions of the current presidential administration, that could be, an experience that is nerve-wracking for you and for your students. But who's taking care of these administrators? Who's looking at the policies on campus that impact their employment, what they are and are not able to do, and then what are their protections with their jobs, right? We would like to think we live in a post-discriminatory environment, but we do not. There are often experiences that our staff will have where they don't feel like they have anyone to go to. They go to their peers, but do they come to us to talk about, I felt like I was discriminated against, or this is not fair. Why don't we have this for this particular population of workers? They have it for students, but they don't have it for us. Yeah. So in this presentation, part of this is really talking about why it's important, but you can't just go right in and do the work, right? Mm-hmm. So my co-presenters, Loxley Nibbs, who's at Florida Gulf Coast University, and Marquise McGee, who is the director of advising for University Advising at James Madison University. He reports directly to me at work. We presented on just storytelling, right? We told our stories. And so we shared a story about either why we stayed in the institution or why we left an institution because of DEI issues. And so I shared the story when I was a junior professor at a dean, and she was every bit of racist, I'll just say it. And I felt that in many different ways, where she would invite the white junior professors over to her home to talk with them about research and how they get research grants, took them up to Washington, D.C. And I would hear about this afterwards, like, why was I not invited? And so that's the first time I felt in a work environment that I was not being protected and that was a discriminatory act. And then my supervisor did nothing about it. I went to her about it, and it was like she was protecting her job. And so it really angered me, and I eventually left the institution. And I said, if I ever became a supervisor, I would never put my supervisee in that role. So I'm always conscious and aware of the types of things that are happening to them. Well, in order to do this work with other administrators, you have to know who you are and where you stand when it comes to cultural responsiveness. Yeah. And so we worked with the cultural competency continuum. We reviewed it. We gave examples. We had the administrators talk about it. And then we had them to identify individually, so it protected who they were, where they felt they were on the continuum and why. And we did, a word cloud so they could put it up there anonymously. And we talked about two things: how they felt as they were moving through that continuum, about where they were, and then exactly where they were. Found a lot of them, they felt ashamed, they felt angered, they felt frustrated, they felt unknowledgeable. And then a lot of them said they felt just unaware. And said, well, they were glad that we did that exercise, because then it put them into a different space of thinking about how do they take care of the DEI needs of the advisors that work for them. Yeah. And the next thing we did was we broke into two groups. I had advisors on one side, administrators on the other side, and I asked simply one question. I asked the administrators, what do you think are the 5 most important DEI needs of your advising staff? And I asked the advisors, what are your 5 most important DEI needs? And so we brought that data back together. We found a gap analysis. It was really interesting. I can't remember exactly what some of the gaps were, but one was the big gap was knowledge of policy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of advisors felt that policies are thrown at them. They didn't have an interpretation to understand. And the administrators go, oh, we give them the policy and they understand the policies. I'm like, okay, so this is why we're having this conversation, because there's a discrepancy between what an advisor feels they need to be protected in that environment and what an administrator says. And so we had some really fruitful conversations. We talked about some best practices. They gave some suggestions to each other, and it was really good. It was really, really good. It was refreshing to have that conversation, particularly, like I said, in this environment. They felt like it was a needed conversation because they were at a loss. Administrators go, I don't really know. I really never thought about it.
So it's almost like not necessarily to a fault of an administrator, but they may have just shown that there's some miscommunication or lack of communication that was going on, and it kind of opened their eyes of like, oh, we thought our advisors understood, but maybe we need to bring them more to the table sometimes.
Yeah. And even to the point where a lot of the administrators and advisors talked about, well, here's some of the DEI professional development that is available on campus. And ironic that they did that because we had an example of that in our presentation. It's called the Privilege Walk. And if anyone has ever done the Privilege Walk activity, 10 years ago, I was like, oh, that's great. It's wonderful when you call these things out and you take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about where your next meal is coming from. Take 1 step backwards if you have ever been without heat for 24 hours. And one of the administrators chimed up and go, yeah, we did that activity. We thought it was great. I said, let's talk about it. Were you one of the ones that were waiting in the back? No. Okay. Well, did you think about those who were waiting in the back and how, though that activity is well intended to show disparity, that in that moment, those folks in the back were being marginalized and exposed, and they didn't ask to be exposed. I said that same activity was proposed at the second institution I worked at. And after going through it the first time and doing some cultural competence training, I decided that was not in the best interest of the employees I was working with. So I refused to do it, and I refused to let them do it, and I explained why. I said, so us being aware of the types of activities that are going to be included in a diversity, equity, inclusion training is important, because you have to understand who's in your audience, in your office. Is it someone from a population that's really be marginalized, a racial or ethnic minority, someone in the LGBTQ population, a person with disabilities? I mean, who is it that you feel is going to be marginalized? In that instance, you have to decide, well, that's probably not a good thing for my staff, right?
So let's jump to, we're in Chicago.
Yes.
We're at the Gardner Symposium. Why are we here?
Well, we are here because I think that we needed to hear another voice for advising, right? I've been with NACADA for 14 years, and great conferences, great information, but I just needed a different perspective. I need to see what else is out there. They were doing a transformational advising track, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. I like the way they had it set up. I did the pre-conference yesterday. It was on student success, but I was able to relate or talk about how academic advising is a large part of student success. But then, today we were on our specific track, which is academic advising. And I thought, the idea of transforming advising was intriguing to me, because we always talk about advising, but this was specifically focused on transforming advising. And I thought, well, maybe I will hear other voices other than those voices that show up at NACADA. And of course, 3 of us are here, right?
Ryan Chuckle being the other one.
Yeah. And
Maureen Schaefer.
And Maureen Schaefer, yeah. So I think that it's been refreshing to hear the advising perspective from a different angle, to approach some of the problems that we normally approach about advising from a different perspective. It's given me kind of a holistic view of how I can go back and tackle problems. So I've enjoyed it. I think that it's been really good. It was small also. So the intimacy of the discussions felt, I won't say more meaningful, but they were very meaningful and they're very impactful. For me, they resonated really well.
Yeah. Now, the lessons learned from advising administrators that you were on, that panel you were on with Ryan.
Yeah.
I heard there was a facilitator. How did he do?
Oh, that Matt person, Matt Markin. Yeah, that kid, I don't know. You're a kid to me, right? No, I'm just saying that. Yeah. Matt did really well. He has some really great and meaningful questions that, Ryan and I could have talked forever on those, but I think that as I looked out to the audience, you can see the yeses and the affirmations and sometimes the grimaces because they experienced something negative there on the campus. So for us to be able to share our experiences as administrators with things such as AI and technology on college campuses, change management on college campuses with advising was really important, because it just affirmed that our work is never done with advising. As administrators, we are sometimes the middle managers, right? Because if you're not the provost, and then what I call the C-suite, then you're a middle manager, and share with them how we mitigate things for our advisors, how we make things happen, how we do things to make sure that advisors' well-being is taken care of was really useful and helpful, and it felt really good to share the little knowledge that we had with those administrators and advisors that were in the audience. So it was a different type of forum, but I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. Now, these two conferences were literally back to back.
Yes.
I know for me, I will never do two conferences back to back again. I don't know about you.
No. It was, though I've gotten a lot out of both conferences, I tell you what, flying out of Washington, Oregon last Saturday morning at 9 o'clock and landing in Vegas, and I'm in meetings all day. Then I'm doing a pre-conference the next day. Then I am back and forth to concurrent workshops. And then we leave on the last day of the NACADA conference and fly here, and it's hit the ground running again. And now it's Saturday again. I've been gone for a week.
Yeah.
And advisors and advisor administration, we don't turn the email off because something's always happening. But I don't think I'll do that again because I am I'm exhausted. It's a good exhaustion, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's like NACADA conference, awesome. Gardner Symposium, awesome. But
together, they need to be about a week apart next year.
There you go. Now, we were in Chicago the first night. We were having dinner, and just out of the blue, I bring up Michael Jordan. Not out of the blue, we're in Chicago, right?
My, here we go.
But then Quentin is saying, by the way, I have a connection to Michael Jordan, so I feel like you need to share this because as many years as I've known you, I never knew any of this.
It's just kind of funny. So I attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I was there. So I was a freshman in 1983. Yes, I'm that old. And Michael Jordan was in his last year at the institution that year as well. So I knew Michael Jordan. We had a class together. I don't know if he'll remember, but I will always remember now that he's so famous. But I tutored him. I was a tutor for the athletic department during spring semester, and there was a class that dealt with math. I forget what it's called, but I tutored him for the athletic department. It was probably 4 or 5 week tutoring. That's my connection to him. Other than he was on campus when I was there, and I can say I knew him.
Yeah. And with that time that you did know him, how was he as a?
Oh, he was a great person. He was great. He was always nice, always cordial. He was just a regular part of campus. He was this emerging superstar on our campus already. He was a superstar on campus already. So, but he's a regular student. Like for some student athletes, it goes to their head. Not him at all. He was just a normal. You see him hanging out on the yard like everyone else did. It was a place we hung out in between the undergraduate library and Green Law, which is the English department. And he was right there with us, just hanging out, having fun, joking. He came to parties. He did all kinds of stuff. So he was just a normal person. He was fun.
Now, we have done a lot of travel as higher ed professionals, conferences, symposium, institutes, all of that. I think for me, this is the one place I've bought so much merch of the place I'm at. The fact that I have my for those listening, we did a tour of Wrigley Field. So I have my Wrigley Field cap. We saw a Chicago Bulls game, which they did win.
Yes.
Now all of a sudden I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, which I was when I was younger. But yeah, I've had a fantastic time here.
Yeah, I have too. I enjoyed the food scene is incredible. I was telling Matt about this place called Tenoshi's here that I ate at about 10 years ago, maybe 10, 11 years ago. I said, we have to go to Tenoshi's, and there's this dish called fish and chips, and you're going to die for it. And Matt was thinking, well, how do you take French fries and fried fish and put it in the sushi?
Yeah, you're doing some tempura style.
No, I had to explain to him what it was, and he didn't get it until we got there. They brought this plate that had this chopped seared tuna mixed with some sort of umami sauce and layered with avocado and roe and all this stuff. And then you have these big chips, like tortilla chips. And he took the first bite out of that appetizer and he goes, I just got to sit here for a moment.
Yeah. Close my eyes. It was heavenly.
Yeah.
To the point where we finished, the rolls that we got and all that. And we had to end, instead of dessert, it was like, no, let's get another order of fish and chips. So definitely highly, highly, highly recommend.
Yeah. If you ever come to Chicago, Tenoshi's you have to go to.
And now I'm hungry, and it's the end of this day, so let's go have some dinner.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, when you spend so much time traveling and thinking through just the life experiences, the types of conversations that we get to have with colleagues is it's really genuinely one of the things I love most about the work that we do. Obviously, the podcast dynamic, conducting interviews, it can make those conversations seem more formal maybe, or to have a different context. But if there is one thing that I learned in this week-long adventure, 2 different organizations, 2 different conference event styles, 2 different frames of reference, is we're just, doing our best as educators, really trying to make a difference in the outcomes for our students, for ourselves and our colleagues and our institutions. Whether it's a conversation on a podcast or something written for publication, we can have these conversations. And that can be something that informs the way I think about the job and what it means to be an academic advisor.
Well said. I think the only thing I would add to that is, with some of these events, like, don't make them one-offs. If you can, and you have the funding or can get the funding, try to be consistent and go into these conferences if you can year after year, because you'll see a lot of the same people, and then you'll probably get to know them even better and make those connections and, have those collaborations. And that might turn into things that happen at your institutions, presentations, research, however that might be. But it's all about advancing the field. And it was a great experience. Again, probably won't do 2 in the same week. Maybe I'll spread those out a little bit more. But I'm looking forward to future events, whether it is NACADA, is Gardner, or maybe another organization that might have it. But this is episode 150. We'll see how many more happen after this. But great to have this milestone. Great to be with you, Ryan. And let's see what happens in 2026.
Here's another 150.
We'll see.